Backstage.
I'm Dan Veaner. I hope you're enjoying my FunnyHarp videos, and I thought you might also like knowing a bit about how I make them. So this is the first of a new series of occasional Backstage at FunnyHarp videos. I make the videos in 2 small rooms at home. It's fun to create all the pieces and then put them together to make multiple Dans come to life, singing in harmony and playing an assortment of instruments and doing goofy stuff. I use 5 basic steps: record the soundtrack, record video clips, and then edit. I start by choosing or writing a song and then trying to picture fun ways to present it. In many cases, I work out how the lyrics can be adapted to make it funny, and I try to imagine the finished video, working out the visual humor, sometimes rewriting lyrics, deciding which instruments to use, working out limited blocking, and so on. For the techies out there, I use Logic Pro for sound recording and Final Cut Pro, a video editor, on an iMac to make these videos, and you can use any editors that you have or feel comfortable with. My next step is to record the soundtrack, and I use 2 smallish rooms in our house, one for sound and one for video. The first has a computer, a mixing board, mics, and so on for recording audio, and the other room has a green screen setup for recording the video clips. I record all the vocals and most of the instruments in the sound studio room, but it's cramped and there isn't enough room for my harp. So I record harp in the green screen room with a portable Tascam Pocket Studio, using various pickups and mics to record the harp and a few other instruments that don't fit in the sound room. It's not ideal, but it works. I record most of the vocals, any MIDI tracks, some small instruments using Logic Pro, and then edit the tracks into what I hope will be a final mix. I use a web-based mastering service to finish the soundtracks once I'm pleased with the mix. Once I have a workable soundtrack, I use an iPhone to record each video clip, generally in front of a green screen, at least one for each version of me that will appear in the video. I use a blue screen for a couple of videos that have something green in them, like hats and shirts in Early One Morning, and the frogs in Amphibian Blues. Green clothes and frogs would disappear if they were filmed in front of a green screen. Chroma key doesn't know what should stay and what should go, just removes everything that's green, or blue as the case may be. I sometimes film on location, like the fisherman in Fish and Blues, and then layer more green screen me's over that. And I almost always use a teleprompter video with a version of the soundtrack, as loud as possible, with about 15 seconds of lead time and then a count.
1, 2,
that
3,
gives me time
4,
to get into
1,
position and start the recording. My teleprompter has the soundtrack from Logic Pro on the bottom, which also helps remind me when an instrument begins playing. I place the monitor just below the camera, or on one side or the other, depending on how I'm angled to the camera. That way I can see it while lip syncing. And I admit, I make these videos so quickly that I rarely have time to memorize. So this makes me look better than I really am. I turn on the camera and then I rush to get into place so that I can lip sync and finger sync when the music starts playing. The main reason I do this is to avoid having earphones on each Dan. You have to record each track without the soundtrack from other tracks bleeding into it. So you do need earphones while recording all but the first track, and you've probably seen YouTube videos that show this, where the musician's playing different instruments in different squares on the screen, wearing headphones so that they can sync with her or himself. And recording the whole soundtrack and then syncing lip and finger movements solves that problem. But it creates new challenges. Now, I don't play from printed music. I improvise the arrangements, so remembering what notes I played on all the instruments is challenging for me, especially for an old guy like me. And I just record multiple takes until I get it right, or close enough.
And here's just a quick shameless plug. Don't forget,
if this video has been helpful, please share it and subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Dan Harp Music.
Blocking, which is stage movement, has to be limited because the video studio room is so small that I have to record in portrait mode on my iPhone. I can't get a wide landscape shot because I can't get the camera far enough away. So you won't see me walking from one end of the screen to another because I can't get a good camera angle for that. For most of my shots, the only way to get at standing Dan is to put the camera tripod in the adjoining bathroom and then aiming it so the doorposts won't show. So most of the time, blocking is just a matter of when the Dans look at each other or at something else on the screen. And I have to admit that I keep mixing up when to look right and when to look left. Or is it? Looking at imaginary things is also challenging. I've read about actors in front of green screens in science fiction movies looking and interacting with strange alien monsters that aren't really obviously there. It's hard enough having a convincing conversation with a non-existent giant alien, let alone riding on top of one or having other kinds of physical contact. And in my case, I am often the imaginary thing. So, for instance, in Don't Go Breaking My Harp, the Elton Dan and the Kiki Dan had to look like they were actually performing together and interacting by the microphone. As I started making the videos, I realized a couple of things. One, because I improvised the arrangements, what I'm playing is not written down, and it is a challenge to remember what I played. So I can sync the fingers and the strings or the sound holes or however an instrument makes notes. And that often means multiple takes for each instrument or singer until I get the sync close enough. I don't think I ever get it perfect. Or sometimes I just cheat. When I made the Grenadier and the Lady, which is one of my favorites, by the way, I played bass for the first verse in the clip and only realized I had no bass in the first verse of the soundtrack when I put the videos together. And I could have changed the soundtrack, but I liked it better without the bass in the first verse. This was back when I had to move furniture around our family room to make room for the green screen setup. And in my old age, it's getting much harder and harder to move furniture. So I didn't want to do that again for just one retake. So I took a screenshot of the bass player and put it where the video clip would have been. If you look closely, that bass player doesn't move at all until the second verse, when suddenly he shudders and begins playing. As of this filming, that video was made over 1.5 years ago, and in all that time, guess how many people have told me that they noticed this? I'll give you a hint, it's a round number. 0. And there's another cheat in that video. When I filmed the guitar part, I must have been really into it because my foot was tapping wildly. Now, it wouldn't have been as much of an issue, except that my shoes, these shoes actually, have that white line along the edge. And it was very distracting, bobbling up and down wildly against the darker background. So I took a picture of a rock and photoshopped the color to match the background forest scene. And then I plunked it in front of my foot in the video editor. Problem solved. And one last thing that came from that video. My friend Eric commented that it looked like the chairs were floating in midair above the ground. I realized that with just an iPhone camera and a small studio, I couldn't get the perspective to look right with a real chair. So I made a green cube to sit it on, and now I place a picture of a stool or a chair, or sometimes a rock or a bale of hay, under my posterior in the finished video. That way I can control the perspective of where the chair falls on the ground or on the floor. This technique is also handy for making it appear I'm sitting on a step or something in the pictures that I use for backgrounds, like the bass player in Mama Don't Allow. Props and wardrobe changes are draped on a daybed to one side of the green screen, out of view. For lighting, I rigged a wash of LED Par 40s. They're the spotlights that you have in your house. And I got some reasonably priced LED photography lights and stands that work really well. You just adjust the color temperature as well as the brightness, and that's really handy for lighting the green screen differently from a human being. Final Cut Pro video editing software also has virtual lighting effects, which I often use. Now I import the soundtrack and the individual video clips into Final Cut Pro. Here's where playing that loud soundtrack on the teleprompter video comes in handy. moving the clips around until the notes and the words match up between the two. Once the sounds align with no lags between the same notes on the different tracks, I know that the lip and finger syncing will also align, so it really looks like I'm singing and playing in the final video. Of course, if I do a half-decent job of it, lots of retakes. FCP has a lot of titles to choose from, but sometimes I make them in Photoshop and just add fades and movement in the video editor. I use various masks and effects in Final Cut Pro, and of course the big one is the chroma key effect, and it turns the green screen invisible so I can place whatever setting I need beneath the keyed clip, and I can add other graphics or videos to the scene. And I try to use pictures I own, but I often use other graphics and videos, such as the wonderful free stock from Pexels.com or the images I purchase from iStockPhoto.com. Once I've exported my video, I check it several times. Oftentimes I need to fix something in the visuals, or some terrible sound becomes more apparent in the put-together video than it did in the editing software, and it helps to sleep on it and look again in the morning. And that often results in tweaks. So instead of staring at the finished video over and over on my computer, I also find that watching it on different devices like a phone or a TV helps me find errors or things that could be made better. I find most mistakes when I stream it to our big TV, so I like to do that before uploading to YouTube. And all this tech stuff doesn't mean a thing if the idea and the execution aren't good. But that's for a future Backstage video. If this video has been helpful, please share it and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Harp Music. And let me know in the comments if you want me to cover something else in a future Backstage video. Thanks for watching.